How's it going, guys? I hope all of you are having a good day. Today I'll be showing you how to install a set of some Faction Fab FRs, or any coilover pretty much, on the new BRZ. Now there's a couple different reasons why I decided to go with these bad boys. One is I know that a lot of the time we install some of the most expensive parts in their respective categories, and I know that that's not within a lot of people's price ranges. I know for me, most of the time, I can't afford to go for the top of the line stuff. So I decided to do something a little bit more relatable. Also, I do believe that Faction Fab has quite the tempting value proposition in terms of price versus build quality. For example, the FRs feature a solid aluminum pillow ball camber adjustable top hat. That was quite the mouthful. They're made out of Japanese tube steel. The locking collars are forged 6061 aluminum. And on the new version 2, like I'm holding here, they took some strides even further. For example, the sway bar end link bracket now has 3 points of contact instead of 1 on their version 1s. And the brake line bracket actually finally has a nut pre-welded on, so you don't have to fiddle with the OEM hardware. Anyways, with that aside, let's get to installing these things. All right, first thing we got to do out of the box before we start touching anything on the car is to set the preload. Sounds a little daunting, but Faction Fab actually makes it fairly simple. First thing you got to do is to back off your top locking collar and then tighten your preload collar till the spring has no more room to jiggle around. Now don't overdo it. If you think you've overdone it, just back this off till your spring can jiggle around and then tighten it right to the point where it doesn't have any more play left in it. Now, you can bring your top collar back up, and Faction Fab calls for 4 millimeters of preload, which means we gotta move this preload collar 4 millimeters up. And it's very convenient that their coilover wrenches are also 4 millimeters thick. So, you wanna hold your locking collar in place and start twisting this up until one of the coilover wrenches can fit in the gap between these two. Almost. Maybe a little bit loose. Back it up till it's kind of nice and tight in between the two. Looks like we're probably about there. Move our top collar up, and then we're gonna lock them in place. And boom! That's our preload set. You gotta do this on all 4 coils, and then you can move on to the next step. All right, we're gonna be starting at the front. First thing you're gonna wanna do is unclip the 2 clips holding the ABS sensor wire in, and then undo the brake line from the bracket. Next, we're going to want to undo the sway bar end link. Now, you may need to rent something like a pass-through wrench set for it, or alternatively, if you have a spark plug socket laying around, that works as well. As you can see, there's a little Allen head in the stud. But honestly, usually an impact gun does the job. It is a 17 mil. Next, we have to undo the 2 mounting bolts that hold the strut to the knuckle. The top one is a camber bolt. You can mark your 12 o'clock position on it as it adjusts camber, but chances are you're more than likely going to have to get an alignment after this anyways. They're all gonna be 19 mils and they're usually on there pretty tight, so you're probably gonna wanna use a breaker bar. Now I'm going to keep the top one in place while I get the bottom one out. All right, now just pull the top one out and just gently let it drop. All right, last thing we gotta do to get our front strut out is to just undo these 3 12mm nuts. And once you're undoing the last nut, you want to go ahead and get a hand on the strut because it will just fall straight out. Maybe I shouldn't have put those nuts right there. And there we go, that's one of our front struts removed. Now we just gotta do the same thing on the other side and then move on to the rear. All right, now at the rear, things are a whole lot more simple. All we have to do is undo 2 17mm nuts and 1 14mm nut. These do like to spin once you get them loose, so you're gonna wanna get something on the bolt head on the back. Preferably not your favorite socket or wrench because there's this goopy anti-corrosion stuff on the back and it's really annoying to deal with. We can just let the arm drop. Up top, we just gotta get 2 14mm nuts off. Obviously, remove the trunk carpet and the little styrofoam pieces that go on either side that hold some of the tools. You can't remove this if you're a perfectionist, but I have a ratcheting wrench, so I'll be able to get in under it. As you can see, I already loosened one and left it hanging by just a couple threads. Now I just gotta get the front one loose. All right, now preferably have a friend grab it for you, or if you have a big wingspan like me, you can reach around and hold it yourself. All right, now to take some measurements, set our desired right height, and let's throw the Faction Fabs on. All right, so I know I said measure, but then I found out that Faction Fab actually has this super handy chart. Now keep in mind, they told me they haven't been able to test it with the new generation of BRZ and GR6, so we're gonna use it sort of as a ballpark. I mean, alternatively, you could measure from the mounting to the middle of the bottom hole, and then the same on the coilover, but because the spring rates are so different, just because this is 2 inches shorter doesn't mean it's actually gonna drop it 2 inches lower. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend just using a caliper tool like this and then taking a look at Faction Fab's chart. So now they say on the rear, minimum thread distance is 10mm. That means the distance between the 2 locking collars. I think I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. I will probably go 25mm distance in the rear and 35 in the front. 24.97 will be just fine. You don't have to get exactly fractions of a millimeter close to each other. I'm gonna hold this lower mount while I tighten down the locking collar. There we go. That's our rear setup. Make sure to do the same, obviously, on the other rear coilover. And for our front, we gotta go 35. We're currently, yeah, way past that. Oh, perfect. Assuming now I don't move it at all while I spin the lower mount up to it. All right, so that is our ballpark right height set. Let's throw these on the car and see how she looks. All right, so this is definitely one of the, probably the most tedious part, honestly, of this whole process, and that's to slot the knuckle back into the strut mount. So just make sure your strut's rotated, what at least you think is the correct angle for it. And you can use a jack to help you, or you can just, oh, see, mine is not right. All right, time to torque them down. Put a wrench on our camber bolt, make sure it doesn't move. There we go. Jeez, that's a lot. All right, next we just gotta pop our ABS clips back in and bolt down our brake line bracket. The torque spec for the brake line bracket is something like 22.1 foot-pounds. All right, the last thing we gotta do up front is to just tighten up the sway bar end link. That will be torqued to about 33 foot-pounds. This is your friendly reminder to tighten down the bottom sway bar end link nut before you install the coilover. That way you can actually get something else in here besides just a crescent wrench and go not even a quarter turn at a time, like I am right now. All right, so our front is all done. Now it's time to put the coilovers on the rear. For this part, I highly recommend having a friend help you, because I was able to get them out on my own without dropping them, but getting them in is kind of a whole different beast. But in case you're like me and have no friends, I have a little trick to show you. All right, so what you want to do if you don't have any help is just grab your bottom mounting bolt for the strut and just very loosely mount it into the lower control arm. Then grab a jack or a transmission jack, just depends whether you're doing this on jack stands or on the lift. And then start jacking up your coilover into place. And there we go. Now we can go up top and tighten up the top hat nuts. All right, I have my nuts tightened up top, so now I'm good to release the transmission jack from the control arm. Now we can go ahead and bolt up the rest of the control arm. Next, you gotta get your lower control arm bolt in. If you are doing this the way I was doing it, aka you attach the coilover to the control arm is gonna wanna go up, so you will have to kind of push down on it and pull it a bit outward to get it to align. And then next, we'll just wanna put our sway bar end link bolt through. All right, time to torque it all up. All right, so both of the big 17 mil bolts are going to be 88.5 foot-pounds, and the sway bar end link mount is going to be 33.6, I believe. Ooh, baby. Now I actually can't manage to get the rear lift arms out, so we're gonna need to jack it up and then retract these. There we go. Woohoo, did you see the way it dropped? That is stiff. All right, so in the rear we can get about a finger in the gap. Honestly, pretty happy with it right there. This is the base model, so it comes with 17-inch wheels instead of 18s. I think with 18s, this would probably be a little bit of overkill for me. Then at the front, I'd say 2 to 1.5 fingers Could go maybe a little bit lower here, so instead of 35 mils between the collars, maybe 30. And then one last fitment note, if you are planning to go lower than this, just keep in mind that there's zero camber adjustment in the rear from factory, so you're gonna get quite a bit of negative camber, but I mean, if you're a stance boy and just wanna chew through tires like no tomorrow, eat your heart out, you'll be just fine. If you guys like to see us maybe install some spacers and some adjustable lower control arms in the rear, just let me know. I'll be happy to do that for you guys. Also, if you'd like to see an actual driving review of these coilovers, also let me know down in the comments below. I'd be happy to make a video about it. Now, that'll be about all for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Sorry, I lied. One more thing. I just took it out for a drive, and it actually seems like the alignment's pretty spot on, so I don't know. Maybe that camber bolt trick really does work. But that'll be all. See ya.